All right, dear participants, we are back from our tiny break. And now the third lecture of today will follow, which will be the last one for today. It so happens that this day turned out to be shorter than we expected. But don't worry, all of the lectures that have been announced prior will happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. There were just some tiny technical difficulties with rearranging the schedule at the last moment due to some reasons that are absolutely out of our or any of the lecturers' control. So this third lecture will be Approaches to Texture Classification for Biological Microscopic Photography, presented to you by Mikhailo Koreshkov. He is currently pursuing a degree in pure mathematics at Kyiv Academic University and has a background in applied mathematics from Kyiv Polytechnic Institute. He is a researcher and bioinformatician at CIS-Bio Laboratory of the Institute of Microbiology and Genetics, and also a software developer from Ukraine. Mikhailo, good evening, I guess, for you.
Yeah, good evening, Mikola. Thank you for introduction.
Great.
Yeah, I'm ready to start.
Yeah, so just a tiny reminder about our housekeeping rules. Please take into account that we are collecting all the questions only in written form using Slido. You can access that Slido instance dedicated to this lecture via the QR code on the screen. And also in a minute or two, I will share the direct link in our Telegram chat. And yes, the talk will be for around 20 minutes and all of the time is allocated for questions. So, and yes, once again, the microphones should not be able to be turned on by you, but if for some reason you can, please don't do it. So that's all from me now. I'm stopping sharing my screen. Mikhailo, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Let me open this Slido. Yeah, okay. I will have it open on my smartphone.
We will answer all the questions in the end. Yes?
I guess we can stop if we have questions. I think you can ask it and I will, if I can, I will answer them immediately.
Yeah, so just so that it doesn't disrupt your flow of the speech, so maybe we will just answer all of them in the end. It's all completely up to you. Okay,
well, let's answer the majority of them at the end, and I will just sometimes will look in this Q&A, and if there is something interesting, I will answer it right away. So yeah, I will start presenting. Can you hear my screen?
Yes, we can hear you and see your screen.
Perfect. Yeah, the unofficial name of this presentation is Hitchhiker's Guide to Texture Classifications and Without Deploying. I am Mikhailo. I finished Kyiv Polytechnic Institute in applied mathematics. I am actually a former professional software developer. Yeah, we can go to about me. Actually, I'm a professional software developer, so that is, I worked in different software projects. I worked with embedded with hardware, with firmware, with lately, the last, I guess, a year before going into research, I was working as a game developer in the Unreal Engine. So, yeah. And right now I'm I'm studying for master degree in mathematics, in theoretical mathematics. And right now I'm focused on some numerical methods, actually how we can apply mathematics. And on my hand, I'm still doing applied mathematics, yeah, but to make sure I don't miss anything in the pure mathematics, I decided to go to the Kyiv Academic University and study mathematics. So let's proceed. Today, I will be talking about textual classification, and this talk is inspired by, our project in a laboratory where I am working in. I'm working in Laboratory of Systems Biology, or short CIS-Bio. Its laboratory is a part of a Institute of Molecular Biology and Genetics. So it's actually very cool when you say it. And by the way, our project lead, Alina Frolova, will be speaking, on Saturday, as far as I know, 5 p.m. Eastern European time. So our project is basically focused on, we are doing texture segmentation and texture classification. We are working with biological photographs, microphotographs of small slices of human tissue. And we are trying to find some biologically significant features in these tissues. For example, to find which part of it have more infection, which part of it has less infection, or on the other hand, for example, find different types of tissue on an image. So it's really cool when we are working on real images, when you have access, for example, to a histopathologist, to people you can discuss the results and to see how your theoretical algorithm got applied to real data. So, yeah, I am really happy that I'm working for 10 months now in this laboratory. Let's start with talking about what is texture analysis in general. It's a bunch of methods to describe in computer terms what a texture is. So yeah, well, everyone knows what is a texture. However, it's kind of complicated to explain in strict terms. For example, one can describe texture as some kind of pattern. However, textures are not repetitive patterns, so it's not a tiled image. So when you're talking about pattern, actually we are talking about some statistical features of co-occurrences of some intensities or some heights if you're talking about three-dimensional patterns. So here are some samples from Brodat's textures book. Actually, we tried, we use them in our research as well. And yeah, and applications, on the other hand, on one hand, it's kind of obvious thing that any computer vision algorithm should discern textures, but it's a bit difficult to tell how exactly we can apply texture analysis, because texture analysis actually is usually kind of part of a greater sphere of computer vision. But several concrete application examples is our project when we segmented tissue in biological images. And another, historically, as far as I know, it's one of the first applications, is segmentation of aerial and satellite photography photographers. Well, for example, you want to calculate what the area of crops are and how many trees there are. Or, for example, one of my friends was working on a project to calculate the healthiness of the crops and of the green areas. So that's the things that texture classification can help you with. Let's spend a minute to define more strictly what is texture. Well, I will not give you an answer because an answer is very fuzzy, but I can tell you something about how we can describe texture. Some examples are just to calculate the mean or variance of a patch or of an image. Well, it will be a single value. It will not give you much information, but actually it's very useful in downstream analysis of your data. Another thing to try to calculate is a gradient of image. So the gradient of image is just a direction of the most steep changes in image colors or in image intensities. So we can use some information about gradients to describe what patterns do we see, where are the edges, and etc. Also, we can try to describe our pattern in the terms of other patterns. For example, we have a bunch of ideal patterns or basis patterns. And, just like a Fourier transform, actually Fourier transform is another way to describe a texture. And here, yeah. Can you see my cursor, my pointer?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Here we can see, for example, a JPEG basis. So this is a basis of elementary parts from which JPEG images are made. So actually, JPEG image is just a fun fact. It's a bunch of coefficients of these images. So any JPEG image is actually some kind of Fourier transform of your image. And as I told you before, one of the most important, yeah, laser pointer is accessible. One of the most important things to see in the texture is co-occurrence statistics or something like that. So basically, we want to calculate how often and which levels appear next to each other. Or, for example, in 2 pixels, in distance of 2 pixels about each other. So these co-occurrence statistics are very important, and there are a lot of popular texture descriptors that work with co-occurrence. And for example, today I will be talking about local binary pattern descriptor that is totally based on a co-occurrence without convolutions, without anything. Yeah, that's some images about what I have just told you. Basically, all these texture banks and basis textures can be described as just a result of a convolution. So one type of texture descriptions is just convolutions. Another type is something based on a gradients. For example, this is really great example I took from SK image documentation. So here we can see we take a bunch of gradients, we take some kind of histogram of these gradients, and we characterize a small part of image by a mean of a gradient in the neighborhood of a pixel. Co-occurrence-based methods, yeah, it's just mathematical formulation of it. And yeah, I have a lot of talk, so I will proceed. Something to bear in mind when we are talking about textures, actually there are some transformations that the texture is should be invariant to. For example, when you are looking at a texture of a tablecloth or at the texture of a brick, you can recognize it no matter from what angle you see, or no matter what lighting conditions are. But yeah, I guess you know that this is a great problem for computer vision and as well for texture recognition. So a perfect preferable texture measure, texture descriptor should be able to detect different rotations or be invariant to rotations and be insensitive to illumination differences. Unfortunately, illumination differences are a really great problem, and I don't know if there is some algorithm to, well, I will just show you. This for images are photographs of the absolutely the same patch of a cloth that I took yesterday. I just applied a light from different directions. So here we can see that actually even from a human perspective, these are kind of different textures. So in real life, in real data, lighting is really important. So for example, for some experiments, when you are trying to decode the three-dimensional structure of your texture, you definitely need to light it up from different directions, totally not from the one, not from above, not from the side, but from a different direction. Yeah. And another thing that's really interesting about textures is that they are really scale dependent. For example, we can talk about a texture on a 45 by 45 pixel page. And as you can see, depending on resolution, In the first case, this is a bunch of threads, so we actually can see some even macro structure, and we can use it to define what is a clothes, what is a textile tissue. And the second case is when we have 10 times larger linear scale, so 100 times more pixels, and the same 45 by 45 patch is telling us practically nothing. So as one paper told, depending on the scale, a single uniform texture on one scale, for example here, when we can see edge between different stitches between different threads, actually is a part of a larger structure, larger texture. So every time we are working with texture, we need to remember some kind of physical background of what is it. For example, in biological images, many biological formats always store real-life distance information with the image. So apart from a number of pixels, number of width and the height of your image, for example, biological images also store what are scale. So to make sure that we understand this scale thing properly. And let us proceed to LBP texture descriptors that we were working on our project in SysBio. I want to give you some background about it. What are different types of LBP? Most simple, I guess, oldest version of local binary pattern descriptor is just a 3x3 calculates just in the 3x3 matrix around the pixel. So it's 1 pixel, and we have this little box, 3 pixels wide and 3 pixels height. Then we fix this. We fix this central pixel and we use it as a threshold. So we are trying to see what pixels around are brighter or dimmer than the central one. We record this as ones and zeros. And then we get a vector of ones and zeros. But vector of ones and zeros is really awkward thing to work with in computers. So a much better thing for computers is a binary value. For example, we can multiply every 1 or 0 by 2 to the power of p, where p is the number of a square number of a pixel around the central one. And somehow, in this way, we can encode this vector of ones and zeros in a single 8-bit number. And then this number can be used as a texture descriptor for a small neighborhood of 3x3 around each pixel. It looks like, a little bit about why this thing works. Firstly, as we use only differences and only a sign, we are kind of invariant to the contrast changes. Well, not to the changes in lighting condition when you are lighting from different sides. But when you, for example, have a light spot or dark spot, so this thing will be invariant to this light spots or dark spots, because we are only talking about differences between central and border pixel. As well, you can perform some contrast changes, for example, a gamma adjustment of the image. So any monotone changes in your image levels will do for this algorithm. And that's really great. Yeah, the descriptor has surprisingly great performance, and a lot of papers use it as a baseline. But as you can see, it limits to the neighborhood of 1, so the radius of 1 pixel around the central one. Actually, we can go around it by using different scales of an image. For example, when you can blur your image or downsample it, and then use this descriptor over and over again on different scale levels. But on the other hand, there are local boundary patterns with arbitrary radii. Actually, that's almost what we are working with at our project. Well, we can define some kind of a generalization of this thing. We just define a start pixel, define a radius, define a number of pixels, or number of points around the central one, and just by sinus and cosinus get pixel coordinates of image what we want to sample. And then we are doing absolutely the same thing, but the difference is that because we have more than 8 sample points, our LBP codes will be much larger. So here we can see we have 8 sample points, which correspond to actually this case. And 8 sample points correspond to 2 to the power of 856 possible values. And here we can see 16 points, and that's half of a usual integer. And yeah, more than 64 points is very questionable, because 64 is typical well, architectures that we are using are typically 64 bits, and everything after 54 is really awkward to work with in computers. And another thing about how we calculate is when we are sampling the subpixel instead of pixel. So that is when we are trying to calculate a value between pixels. We just do bilinear interpolation. That's unusual, but actually it's work pretty well. So here, yeah. And let's try to tackle this problem of rotation invariance. We can define, for example, this pattern as equivalent. I will speed up a bit because we are near the end of my presentation. So I will skip some information. Another variant of LBP is rotation invariance when we define equivalent, this rotation invariant bit strings. This gives us still exponential, but a little bit less number of possible LBP codes. And the final evolution of LBP patterns is starts with the advent of uniform LBP patterns. Some papers found that actually there are some typical patterns that appear most of the time, and some atypical patterns that appear much more rare. So these typical patterns, they call them uniform patterns, and they define them as you can see, patterns that have at most 2 transitions between 1 and 0. So that is when you can absolutely clearly define a separation between ones and zeros. And for some applications, these uniform patterns consist up to 90 or sometimes 75% of all patterns. So actually, you can avoid talking about this great space of possible LBP codes and just talk about these uniform patterns. And everything that is not uniform, you just classify as non-uniform pattern, one code. So, and of course, a possible way to define this pattern is just to count number of ones. Then every pattern that have this number of ones is equivalent. So this way we can have a code space of p plus 1, and comparing to the code space of 2 to the power of p is, I get, really great. And these uniform patterns that are rotation invariant and contrast invariant is what we are doing actually. A little bit of examples. So yeah, every code corresponds to some kind of has some kind of intuition behind it. For example, some codes correspond to corners, so the neighborhood around this pixel is some kind of corner. Some codes correspond to edges. Some codes correspond to peaks when the center is brighter than the other ones. Some codes correspond to a pit when the center is has the same brightness or dimmer than the other one. And of course, there are other non-uniform patterns, but we are not talking about them right now. And when we are increasing this P, our code space increases. But anyway, we can talk about this several categories of codes. And these are some examples of LDP codes. Well, this, for example, is, as you can see, from 0 to 9, where 9 is non-uniform, and this is number of ones. And it's and this is codes for different radii and different number of points. I will send you this presentation, I guess, in the Telegram chat, so you can see it yourself. I will not stop it. I will not stop for it right now, unfortunately. But that's just funny to see and to try to understand what they're capturing in the image. And as I guess the final thing that I will talk about is how to describe a texture. It turns out the best way to describe a texture, so the best way to describe not a neighborhood of 1 pixel, but characteristics of a bunch of pixels of for example, part of an image, is to calculate a histogram of these LBP values. Actually, this will work with any other descriptor, but right now I want to talk about LBP histograms. So what we are doing is, unfortunately, I will not cover this thing because I'm out of time. What we can do is divide image into sub-images and, for example, calculate what texture we have at each sub-image. To do so, we can calculate a bunch of different LBP codes, that is, with different parameters, with different radii, with different number of points. And then calculate a histogram for each LBP descriptor across each this so-called patch or image tile. Then we can combine these histograms into one very long feature vector. And it turns out these feature vectors that consist of concatenated histograms are really great at detecting different textures. And well, this is the typical pipeline that we are doing, that we developed. And of course, there are tons of information that I want to talk to you, but I guess I will stop now. I will thank you. Yeah, I'm really grateful that organizers invited me. And I just want to spend a minute to talk about my great collaborators, great people at SysBio Lab that I was lately working with. And of course, Ben from well, Ben is the person that started our project, and we started this Ben. Virginie is kind of our great advisor that helps us with theoretical aspects, and other people at Sanger Institute. Well, it's our framework and our main collaborator as an institute. Yeah, that's it, I guess. Thank you for attention, and I will happily answer your questions if you have time.
Great. Thank you very much for an interesting talk. Quite a great take. Just another one example of those cases that you do not need to apply neural networks to everything you see. Sometimes you need to get better domain knowledge and work with considering more of the structure of the problem itself to arrive to a much more suitable solution. So yeah, we do have a couple of questions. I will share my screen now to let everyone see them. So the first question is, how faster are these unsupervised methods as compared to convolutional neural networks? Also, do they exhibit comparable texture classification accuracy?
Well, regarding the textual classification accuracy, I guess they are. The interesting thing is one of the possible ways of defining a texture is running a convolutional neural network on an image, and then not using anything apart from some results in layers of this network. So basically, you run an image through a convolution, through a CNN, then you get some layers inside a CNN and use these layers as a basis for your texture recognition. So basically, I guess CNN is just a lazy way to define a texture. But of course, that's because I am avoidant of neural networks at all, and I'm trying to stick to classical computer vision. But yeah, and about speed. A distinctive feature of neural networks is that the convolutions are very fast operation on GPUs, and you can greatly speed up operations using parallelization and vectorization. LBP, on the one hand, it got less operations to compute, but I guess you need to segment the results later, and the segmentation part will take a lot of time. But on the other hand, LBP cannot be described as a convolution. Actually, that is the thing that we were researching specifically, how to describe LBP as a convolution to run it on the GPUs. Unfortunately, it can be efficiently run only on CPU. So, well, to sum up, I don't have a simple answer to this question, but regarding accuracy, yeah, absolutely, accuracy is comparable.
Great, thank you very much for the answer. And about that part, that what CNN's layers done to the image, yeah, that's like the whole idea of the convolution, that you take an image and applying that convolution, you will receive that transformed image that like has only some main features left, like high level features like lines, angles, some shapes. And yes, so like those pixels that are very like similar in value, there will be some kind of like smoothen all together. But those that pop up on the original image will pop up even more. If, for example, we use the maximum function in there. So yes, that like I guess that is the way to apply this convolution layer and then get the texture of the image to pop up more. Great. And the second question that is for you is, I guess one of the benefits of not using neural networks is you don't need so much labeled data to train. What are the others? Like, you partially have answered this question, but I guess the part regarding supervised learning approach.
Well, actually, it's ongoing research, I guess. We're still looking into possible ways to segment using supervised and unsupervised methods. Of course, I guess we don't need data to train our, for example, transformer. So we don't have any latent layer, latent space, and we don't need to train our descriptor. So we just apply a pre-made descriptor. On the other hand, this descriptor cannot be tuned to our data in some yeah. And one difficult question about this descriptor is to how to tune their parameters. So, for example, we can try to compute these LBP codes for different radius, and for these radius, they will capture some aspects of texture. On the other radius, they will fail to capture one aspect, but capture another aspect, and some radius just don't give any information. But for example, if the radius is large enough, it will take the most of computation time. So, and we really don't want to waste computation time. So I guess if we know what are the optimal parameters, for example, from the biology, we know what are typical sizes of cells and what are typical sizes of tissue regions. We can somehow derive the optimal parameters and run only those descriptors that we are sure about. But if we don't know, unfortunately, we need to go through different combinations of parameters, and that is really that really resembles what neural networks are doing when optimizing their weights. So I guess neural network is just a universal tool that is very versatile and can be applied to practically every case. Texture descriptors and this texture classification algorithm that I'm talking about is a very fine-tuned thing that really needs careful selection of parameters.
I see.
So yeah, I'm not sure we don't need so much labeled data. I guess we definitely need less labeled data, but absolutely, we have a lot of similar problems that neural network have, let's say.
I see. Great. So that's all with the questions right now. So once again, dear participants, this Q&A concludes the third lecture of our first day of Cover Data Science School 2024. I thank you, Mikhailo, for joining us today and sharing your research and your general experience of coming to this area from a completely different background. Once again, so all the materials that you want to share, just send them to any one of the organizers. We will compile them and to some like Google Drive folder or some sort of that. So ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our first day of data science school. I'm very grateful for all of you to come in here today to listen to our amazing speakers that have been sharing their research from of applying machine learning to natural sciences. We've talked about physics, we've talked about biology, and yes, once again, thank you very much for coming. And I do encourage you to come on both the next days, on Friday and Saturday, because there are many more nice lectures to come. Also, some foreign professors will be having their talks tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So you don't really want to miss that for sure. All right, so for the third time, thank you very much for coming. I guess this concludes this day of the school, and we can end our Zoom conference on this note. All right, so now I'll just end the recording. And yes, once again, if you do have some questions regarding the technical aspects or any other, feel free to ask them in the chat. Our group of people from the organizing committee will be very happy to answer. Great. Once again, thank you very much for coming. Take care.